Hello! I'm sorry that these videos have been taking so long to get up, but they're finally here, and so this is my movie wrap-up, where I talk about the movies that I watched in the month of August. It's very exciting, especially because this month I watched 14 movies. 14. I don't even know how I did it. But as always, we're gonna first just mention the movies that I rewatched, and then I will go in depth with the new movies that I watched. Smart House, Bridget Jones's Baby, Life of the Party, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, The Lego Movie, The Lego Batman Movie, The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, Mockingjay Part 1, Mockingjay Part 2. I had myself a little Hunger Games marathon. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Under the Tuscan Sun, Love, Simon, Descendants, Descendants 2, Love, Simon again, Kingsman: The Secret Service. And that is it. Those are all the rewatches. Now let's talk about those new movies that I watched. The first one is The Kissing Booth. This came out on Netflix a few months ago, and it was one of those movies where I was like, I probably would like it, but I also don't want to watch it. Like, it also kind of looks stupid. But I came home one day, and my roommate was watching it, and so I just decided to, like, sit down and watch it with her, but it was like, she was already halfway through the movie. So I watched it from like the middle to the end, but I actually like really enjoyed what I watched. So then the next day when I was at the dentist and he was like, what do you want to watch on Netflix while I clean your teeth? I was like, the first half of The Kissing Booth. So I did watch this movie in a very interesting way. I watched the ending and then I watched the beginning. But I actually really enjoyed this movie. So this movie is like a very teenager romantic comedy, and we follow this guy and this girl. They're best friends, and they have these rules with each other, and one of them is to never date or fall in love with the other sibling. And the main girl, whose name is Ellen, she has a huge crush on her best friend's brother, and they end up kissing at the kissing booth, and then things happen from there. It sounds dumb, which is why I didn't watch it, but it ends up being cuter and funnier than I thought it was gonna be. And it has some like silly tropes that you normally see in rom-coms, but like it worked with this one, and I felt like the actors pulled it off. I did very much enjoy this movie, but I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched is The Spy Who Dumped Me. This is a comedy about 2 girls with their best friends, and then one of the girls' ex-boyfriends comes into the picture and is like, hey, I'm a spy. People are after you now because of me. She and her best friend now have to like go on this like spy mission, and it's hysterical. I also watched this movie in a very weird way. I watched this movie in the theaters, but halfway through the movie, the fire alarm went off, so had to like leave the theater. But then they're like, it's a false alarm, go back to your seats. So I go back, they start the movie, but there was no sound for like a good 10 minutes. And then they finally got the sound to work, but they're like, we can't rewind and go back to where you guys left off. So I was like, okay, I mean, at least I watched it, like I saw what happened, but I didn't hear it. So, and of course, the part that it happened during was when, like, the bad guy became the good guy. So I saw it happen, I just don't know why it happened. So unfortunately, the review you're getting is from, like, what I saw and heard and understood. I'm just, like, not gonna pay attention to that part that I couldn't hear. But overall, I really enjoyed this comedy. I thought it was so funny. I mean, I love Kate McKinnon. She's hysterical, and Mila Kunis was super funny as well. Even though like there was a lot of humor, there was also a lot of action, and I felt the killings were really interesting and like really like well done. I liked the fighting sequences, I liked the killings. They were great. And I really liked the friendship in this movie too. It was just a really great friendship and really great performances from the actors. However, I don't think the ending was explained very well. I think they rushed a few things at the end, but overall, I had a blast watching this movie, and I got a free movie ticket out of it because they screwed up. But anyway, I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched was The Darkest Minds. And this movie is, you know, a teen dystopian series turned into a movie, and this is like obviously the first one in the series. I don't know if they're going to make a second movie just because it didn't do well at the box office and not many critics liked it. So I have a feeling it's not going to get a second movie, which is upsetting because that ending, I cried. I have to say, I tried my dang hardest not to cry, but I did not see that ending coming, and it broke my heart. I was a little confused at times. I felt like they didn't explain some things well, and I felt like they came to conclusions just like a little too quickly, so it felt a little bit rushed, which again, they're trying to fit an entire book into one movie, which is always a difficult thing to do. But I don't know, I felt like the pacing wasn't good, and I felt like they didn't explain certain things well enough. I did love the characters, and I felt like the actors did a very good job portraying them. My favorite is definitely Chubbs. He had the best lines in the movie. I felt like he was the best part of the entire movie, for sure. I felt like some of the dialogue was very, like, cliche and just not witty. And this is also, like, really weird, because I don't usually pay attention to this kind of stuff, but some of the music felt a little out of place. Like, I felt like they were just trying to throw in, like, teen music when it really didn't, like, mesh well with what was going on. I just felt like they were trying to relate to teens, but it was just, like, a bunch of, like, old white men trying to be like, this is what teens like, when that's not the case at all. I enjoyed it for the story and the characters, but I did not enjoy the writing, and I did not enjoy how they ended up putting it together. So I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I just realized I did not explain this movie, but if you want an explanation, I did read the book, and I explain the story in my book wrap-up for this month, so go check that out if you haven't already. The next movie I watched is Like Father, and this is on Netflix. I watched it because I really like Kristen Bell, and this also seems like a very interesting story. I felt like this movie was missing something. But we follow Kristen Bell, and she is getting married, but then at the wedding, the groom just, like, leaves her. The wedding is off. Then, like, she finds out her dad is at the wedding, and she hadn't spoken to her dad or seen her dad since she was a little kid when he left. But then she ends up going out drinking with her dad. They get very drunk, and they find themselves on the honeymoon that she was supposed to go on with her husband. But now she's going on the honeymoon with her dad. And it's more of like a father-daughter story, trying to, like, reconnect. I really loved the cast. I mean, Kristen Bell was good, Kelsey Grammer was good, Seth Rogen was good. Seth Rogen was okay. I feel like it wasn't like a typical character that he usually plays, but I still enjoyed him. Even the side characters I felt were kind of good. I very much enjoyed, like, the gay couple. I felt, yeah, the side couples that they, like, interact with while on their honeymoon on the cruise ship, I really liked them. I liked the mixture of the comedy and the drama. I felt like it did a very good job with that mix, and I felt like it was very, like, good-hearted, authentic. However, it was predictable. I did feel like there was a lot of setup. Like, they had to, like, build a lot of things, and then once it finally found its groove, it got going, but it took a while to, like, set that up. Like, a lot longer than it probably should have taken to set that up. It's not one I think I'll ever watch again, but it's one that I probably will, like, think back on from time to time. So, yeah, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched is kind of a mouthful, and that is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. And this movie is based off of a book. I probably won't read the book, but I absolutely loved this movie. This is like a historical romance that takes place, like, right after World War II, or maybe like a few years after World War II. And we follow these two people. I cannot remember their characters' names at the moment, but it's a girl and a guy. The girl is a very successful author in London, and the guy lives in Guernsey, which I can't remember where exactly that is, and he's kind of like the leader of a book club, and they call themselves the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. They end up having this, like, pen pal letter exchanging where, like, he's like, I really enjoy your writing, and she's like, oh, tell me more about this book club, this society, this sounds interesting. And eventually she goes to Guernsey to attend the book club one night, but then she ends up staying a little bit longer and kind of, like, finding out about these people and how this society came to be, and just like the whole story behind it. And it also turns into like a romance, and this movie was so good. I was very impressed with how well done it was. It was like very beautifully shot, because like Guernsey is it's beautiful, but not in like the way you would suspect. Like, it's a very grungy but still very beautiful, and I love the way they shot the town and the surroundings and the scenery. But also there were like a lot of close-ups on them, so it was just very beautifully shot, I feel like. But I also just really loved the story. It was very emotional. Also, I felt like this was kind of like a Downton Abbey reunion. There were 3 people in here that were in Downton Abbey. I was not expecting the mystery, because I knew this was going to be like a historical drama / romance, but I did not expect this to also be a mystery. But I really loved that a lot, trying to figure out what happened to her, and I wish I could remember people's names. I'm sorry. I really loved it. It's on Netflix. Highly recommend it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched is Christopher Robin, and I was a little disappointed by this movie. With this movie, we follow Christopher Robin as an adult, and he's kind of like lost his childhood sense of mind, but then he gets like reunited with Winnie the Pooh, Piglet, Tigger, the whole gang, and it's just kind of like trying to find his childhood self again. I had a couple issues with this movie. Number one, it was gloomy as fuck. When I think of Winnie the Pooh, I do not think of like very gray, foggy backgrounds, and even like himself, he was like very, like the color of his skin was like very faded. But even just like the topic was very gloomy. And so like I get that you're trying to get the gloomy topic and picture it with a gloomy setting or whatever, but it was just so gloomy and so sad, and I just like, this is not what I want from a Winnie the Pooh movie. I also had no idea who this movie was supposed to be directed to. Like, was this movie supposed to be for kids, or is it supposed to be for adults? I didn't know, because when I went to the theater to see this, the whole theater was filled with like parents and kids, as if it was supposed to be like a kid movie. But as I was watching this, I was like, I feel like this is supposed to be for adults. And I don't know, I just didn't get who their audience was supposed to be. So that like was very confusing for me. However, I mean, I did still like the story and the theme of, you know, growing up but trying not to lose that childlikeness that's inside you, like trying to find that childness way of mind and getting it back. Like, I like that theme, and I like the story. I don't know. There were just a lot of things I didn't like. It was really great dialogue. The animation was very realistic. So, yeah, I mean, I liked it. I didn't love it. It was okay. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched was Black Klansman, and oh my god, I really liked this movie a lot. I don't even know what to categorize this movie. It's like a comedy, but it's also a drama, and it's also like historical. This takes place in the 70s. I believe it's the 70s. So this takes place in the 70s, and we follow Ron Stallworth, who is the first black cop in this town. I already forget the name of the town. I'm sorry, I forget where we are. And he ends up becoming like an undercover cop for them. But he decides one day in his office to just call up the Ku Klux Klan and says he wants to join. He puts on his white voice and says he wants to join because he wants to take down the Ku Klux Klan from the inside. But of course, he can't be with them physically in person. So they have one of the other white cops, they team up with him, and so the black guy is on the phone, but the white guy is like what they see in real life. It was really funny, but like so well done. Yes, it's funny, but like it was very smart humor. It was kind of like that humor where you laugh hysterically, but it also kind of makes you a little uneasy. This movie does deal with, like, racism. It's done so well, oh my god. And the cast was incredible. Oh my god, Topher Grace as Duke something. What was his name? I don't know. It's like the leader of the Ku Klux Klan, that guy. But Topher Grace did a phenomenal job portraying him. And Adam Driver. Who would have thought I would fall in love with Adam Driver? Not me. But even John Washington as Ron Stallworth is incredible. Like, the acting is just so good in this movie. It makes me smile. It was so good. And I do think that this deals with race in a great way. And, like, the ending really makes it powerful. And there was also a scene in the middle that was very powerful that kind of had, like, the dynamic of, like, the back and forth between the Ku Klux Klan and the black people in the community revolting, and just, like, going back and forth between what was happening with them at that time. By the end of this movie, it starts getting very real because we start going into today's time period with the Ku Klux Klan coming back, basically. It was a very powerful movie and a very powerful message, but it still had that comedy aspect to it, and I felt it did such a phenomenal job with that. 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched is To All the Boys I've Loved Before, and how many times did I watch this movie this month? 10. I loved this movie, as you can tell. Like, I think I might have loved it even more than Love, Simon, which is a lot. I also read the book series that this is based off of, and I love that book series. So with this movie, we follow this girl who, every time she has, like, a crush that's so big, she just has to let it out. She writes a letter to them, but she never sends them. But then one day, all those letters get sent out, and she has boys coming to her being like, this letter? And then it kind of turns into a fake relationship with one of the guys. Kind of turns a little real. It's so freaking cute. It's ridiculous. I also love that Jenny Han, the author, made a cameo. I literally, as soon as I saw her on the screen, I screamed. I, like, legit screamed. I squealed. That's the better word for it. Squealed, not screamed. I really did not want this movie to end, so there better be a sequel. I have a strong feeling there is going to be a sequel because of the response that this movie has gotten. Like, everybody is obsessed with this movie. Even Netflix changed their, like, Twitter handle to say this is now a Peter Kavinsky stan, because everyone who has seen this movie is in love with Peter Kavinsky. I am in love with Peter Kavinsky. I also have fallen in love with the actor who plays him, Noah Centineo. Everyone who was in this movie did such a phenomenal job with their character. My favorite was definitely Chris. I feel like the girl who played Chris literally took what was in my head and put her into real life. Even just, like, stylistically and cinematically, this movie was beautiful and shot so well. Like, even some of the shots are, like, framed really well, and oh my god, it's just a really beautiful movie, is like, to look at. One of the big things that I loved about the book was the family dynamic that is in the book, because whenever you read, like, a young adult book, there either isn't a lot of family aspects to it, or the family is, like, a broken family, but this book just had such a great family, and they worked very well together, and so I was, like, really hoping that they would put that in the movie, and they did. The family dynamic in the movie is A+. My favorite scenes were definitely, like, the ones with Lara Jean and Peter when they're talking about real stuff. They get into, like, very deep conversations about their past or their life or their family, and those are really great scenes. Favorite scene of all, of course, has to be the hot tub scene. I want to say I watched that scene, like, 50 times. Like, every time I watched that movie, I just kept rewinding that scene because I just wanted to watch that scene over and over again. My god. And also, like, the hand in the back pocket scene. When I read that that was improv, what Noah Centineo did in that scene. But this was just a very cute, fun, romantic movie. It was perfect in every way. 5 out of 5 stars. Are you surprised? No. The next movie I watched was Juliet Naked, and I went into this thinking I was gonna like it. I did not come out thinking I was going to really like it. I don't think I loved it, but I definitely really liked it. A lot more than I thought I would. This is also based off of a book. There's a lot of movies I watched this month that were based off of books. But this is another one. I probably won't read the book just because the movie was sufficient enough for me. But we follow this woman who's in a relationship with this guy, but she's not very happy anymore. She just feels like she wasted her life at this point with this guy and with her job. And this guy is completely obsessed with Tucker Crow, this singer who, after his last album, went not missing, but he just kind of disappeared and just went away from media and from music altogether. And no one knows why, no one knows where he is, what he's doing now, but this guy is the leader of the fan club website for it, and he is literally obsessed with Tucker Crow and thinks everything that Tucker Crow does is amazing. She is sick and tired to death of Tucker Crow. So when he gets a stripped down version of one of Tucker Crow's albums and is obsessing over it and puts it out on the website, she decides to write a review, but it's a terrible review. She's like, this sucks, blah blah blah. Tucker Crow, the real Tucker Crow, sees that review and just tells her, you nailed it. And they end up having this email pen pal thing back and forth, and then they meet up together and kind of start forming a relationship. I don't even know how to describe it. It's not sweet and cute, but it's also not heartbreaking or emotional. It's just somewhere in between of that. But it is also very funny. I like that it had that humor to it, especially Chris O'Dowd. He was amazing. He was so funny. I also felt it was paced very well, and the ending was not what I was expecting, but it was definitely the ending I think the movie needed. And it's just, it was more about her than about the relationships, which I really liked. It was a very cute story with good chemistry. I did feel like a lot of the story was predictable, but I still enjoyed it. I don't know, it just had a lot of substance to this story. There was a lot going on, and it was all very good and very well done, so I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched is Crazy Rich Asians, and this is a really great rom-com. Yes, essentially it is just your typical romantic comedy, but it is an all Asian American cast, which is something you don't see. And I also just felt even though it was the typical rom-com, it also felt so much more than just that. We follow this couple, this guy and this girl. They're together, they're loving life, they're loving each other, but his family is from Singapore, and his best friend is getting married, and he's the best man in the wedding. So he's like, hey, we're gonna go to Singapore and we're gonna meet my family. And she's like, oh, okay. And then she gets there and finds out that he's rich as fuck. She now has to try and fit in with this family who does not accept her because she does not come from a well-off family. I just feel this was a very well-crafted story and very well-paced. And even though it is predictable because of the storyline, it's still very enjoyable because it didn't feel like a typical rom-com, but at the same time it still had the same tropes as a typical rom-com. But I think what it was that it was a rom-com, but it was also a screwball comedy mixed together, which definitely worked well together. I definitely feel the side characters were the best in this movie. They're the ones that definitely sold it for me, especially Astrid. I feel her side story wasn't needed to further the story, but I really loved her story. And I would have loved a movie on just Astrid, to be honest. If they make a movie about just Astrid, I'm here for it. And then also, I forget this character's name, but Awkwafina played her. She was amazing as well. I really loved her. Oh, Peglin, I think was her character's name. She was great. I also thought that this was not just a movie about a romance. I felt it was also a movie about food, because we got so immersed in this new culture that I don't know a lot about, and they had a lot of scenes that involved food, and they showed a lot of close-ups of the food, and it was just, almost felt like we were watching a movie that was about food. This was a very bright and vibrant movie because the costumes were amazing, the sets and the setting and the backgrounds were just amazing, and I felt the acting was very well done. So I really liked this movie. There was maybe like one or two things that I had issues with, like especially like the side characters and like having their side stories. They were not needed to further the conflict that was going on, but I still liked them. So it was like a very confusing thing because I liked those side stories, but they weren't needed. And I felt like that made the movie a little too long because the movie was very long. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched was Mile 22. This was a very like action movie with like a little bit of spy going on. Not spy, like FBI or CIA or something like that. And they're trying to get this guy out of the country because once they do, he will give them what they want about like a terrorist attack or something. Then there's also people going after him, trying to stop him from leaving the country, but also stop him from giving the like FBI agents or whatever they are that intel that they want and need about this terrorist attack that's about to happen. Whatever. This was not a good movie though. The storytelling and the editing was some of like the messiest I've ever seen. And also the acting was like very one-dimensional. The story and the plot was very confusing. There was very shaky camera work. I also didn't understand the ending, and I also felt there were too many characters. I was not a fan of this movie, but there are a few things there was one thing I did like about this movie, and that was the fight sequences. They were done so well. I was like so mesmerized watching the fight sequences that I just completely forgot that the story was horrible. I felt like the fight sequences were very creative and was very good, very like well choreographed. I do remember, however, like the diner blowing up scene, the consistency was so off in this whole movie. Like the diner blowing up scene, before the diner blew up, there was like a ton of people in this diner. It was packed. And then after it's been blown up and like it's very foggy and like whatever, there's nobody in the diner except for like the 2 main people we're following that were in the diner. And I'm just like, okay, so did they just all disappear out of thin air? Like, what happened? And also, when they're like running around the apartment complex, there's like this little girl that doesn't speak, but she's constantly just like there, and I don't know why she was there, or if she was like really needed. I don't know. There was just a lot wrong with this movie, but I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. It was fine. The next movie I watched was Seven, and this is a movie that came out in the 90s. Someone told me I needed to watch it because he was surprised that I'd never even heard of this movie. I don't think I liked it as much as, of course, my friends do, and I think that's mainly because I feel like at the time that this movie came out, it was like shocking and something no one had ever seen before, but like seeing it now, it just kind of seems like a typical movie, if that makes sense. So for me, this movie was predictable. I saw the ending coming. What I also found funny, because they were like, we're not going to tell you who's in the movie. We want you to be surprised by like one of the actors. And I was like, okay. And so as I'm watching the movie, I'm like clearly thinking like, okay, well there's a bad guy in the movie, and obviously they haven't told me who the bad guy is. So I'm like, what? It's probably like Kevin Spacey or something playing the bad guy. I can totally see it. And then I'm watching the movie, and I'm like, okay, I could see Kevin Spacey being the killer. And then they have like a phone conversation with the killer, and I'm listening to the voice and I'm like, that sounds a lot like Kevin Spacey. And then when they finally meet the killer, it's Kevin Spacey, and I was just like, I knew it. Even before watching the movie, I knew it. Like, I predicted a good amount of this movie. But I feel like at the time period when it came out, it was like all brand new and very shocking, and so I can see how that is. But with this movie, we essentially follow 2 cops that are trying to solve a serial murder case. So they find a dead body, and then they find another one, and they're realizing that it links to the 7 sins. What are they called? Like gluttony, pride, you know, like the 7 sins for like Dante's Inferno or whatever. I also felt like it was too long. Like I felt like they could have condensed a lot of the scenes. I do think the acting was very well done. I think the acting was very good. And I did very much enjoy the story. I felt it was very riveting. Like I felt myself just like really engrossed in the story. But it also just wasn't entertaining for me. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like it was riveting, but it wasn't entertaining enough for me to want to like watch it again. You know? The story was told very well, the pacing was done very well, so I liked it, but it was just okay for me, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched was AXL, or Axel, I don't know how you want to pronounce it. Okay, so I went to go like see this movie in the movie theater, just because it was like on my list of movies that I wanted to see that came out in the movie theater. And then as I'm sitting there watching this movie, and the first scene comes on, and I recognize someone. And then I'm just like, holy crap, that is my friend Alex McNichol on the screen, and he had a very big part. He was like the 3rd lead in the movie. So, Alex, I just want to say, congrats, great job. You're doing great. I'm so proud of you. I was not expecting to see you on the screen, but I'm glad I did, because I haven't seen you in like a year. It's been a while, but now I see why. It's because you're super busy. So that was a very nice surprise, and I think that definitely made me like the movie more. Although Alex did play an asshole. Alex, why are you always playing assholes in movies? I don't get it, because you're not an asshole at all. So besides Alex, my friend, being in the movie, let's actually talk about the movie itself. So this is about pretty much a robot dog that the government is creating, but then the robot dog escapes, and so the government's trying to find it, but this kid who really likes dirt bikes finds the dog and ends up becoming like paired with the dog, and the government is just like, oh shit, okay, well, we found the dog, but like he now has like an owner and like will only obey this kid. That's essentially it. So the government's trying to take down the kid, take down the dog. So I feel like the story itself is fine. Like I like the story. I just feel like the movie was lacking something. Like the story needed something else, or maybe it needed to get rid of something. I don't know. There was just, it was like I enjoy the concept of the story. I just feel like maybe the execution of the story wasn't well done, but I don't know why. I do think the scenes with like the scientists who had created the dog, with them just like sitting around a computer screen trying to find the dog, they felt very stupid to me. Like I understand why they were needed, but I don't know if it was the dialogue. I feel like, yeah, it's probably the dialogue that they had that just felt so stupid. I like the take on the whole like dog and man best friend type of story, but like this like kind of twist to it, so I liked that. But yeah, it was just lacking something. It was like predictable, and the movie wasn't like exciting the entire time, but it did have like these bursts here and there of action and excitement. So like overall, it was okay. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. And then the last movie that I watched this month, we are finally here at the end, is SPF 18. And the reason I watched this is because A, it's on Netflix, B, Noah Centineo is in it. And as you can tell, I've been clearly obsessed with Noah Centineo because of To All the Boys I've Loved Before. He has become my phone background, like, I really like him. So I was like, oh, here's another, like, cute little romance movie that he was in. Do not watch this movie. It was pure crap. It was, oh my god, I don't even know why it was called SPF 18. They had one scene where they were looking at the sunscreen and talking about, like, Icarus, and they're like, oh, and it's SPF 18. And I'm just like, okay, what does Icarus have to do with the story? And SPF 18, like, that's not a title for a movie if it's just in this one scene that literally does nothing for the movie. Even though I did watch this for, like, Noah Centineo, he was not, like, dreamy in this movie. Like, I didn't fall in love with him in this movie, but he was one of the better actors, because the acting is terrible. Like, this definitely felt like a college film, but like a bad college film. Or a bad high school student film. Like, it just, the acting was horrible. But also, like, the writing was really bad. It was just, like, dumb and dull and just stupid. Also, I think, like, that is some of the weirdest narration I have ever heard in a movie. Because the narrator was Molly Ringwald, and Molly Ringwald is in this movie, and I like her. But that narration was just weird. I didn't get it. This movie just didn't make a lot of sense. It was confusing, the storyline was flat, and the actors were terrible. Like, it was just a bad movie all around. I do not recommend this movie at all. I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. And there you have it. Those are the movies that I watched this month, and you can also check out the books that I read this month, and just my month in general as a whole. Go check that out, and I will hopefully see you guys soon with another video. Bye!